The chamber of the Galactic Council was older than memory. Its walls were carved from crystal stone that sang when touched by light. Beams of starlight entered through the ceiling, scattering into 1,000 colors. To outsiders it was beautiful. To those who knew, it was terrifying. Every great empire of the stars had once stood inside this hall. Every world that had sought recognition, every species that had wished to join the council had been measured here. Some were welcomed. Some were dismissed. Some were erased, and now it was Earth's turn. The humans had sent their envoy. He stood alone, his figure dwarfed by the tall alien delegates around him. His suit was plain. His shoes were polished but worn. He carried no weapon, no grand jewel, no glowing crown. He carried only a folder of papers, a relic in a room filled with living light and holograms. The council watched him the way collectors watched insects pinned to a board. The leader of the council, a being with 100 silver eyes, spoke first. Its voice was deep but empty of warmth. "Humanity," it said, "your petition has been reviewed. You are clever. You are restless. You are dangerous. We have observed your wars. We have measured your machines. We find you primitive." The word rang through the chamber. Primitive. The humans had expected this. Their envoy had been warned. Still, the word struck like a knife. He lifted his chin and met the gaze of the council leader. His voice was steady. "You call us primitive, yet you call yourselves wise. Do the wise judge a song without hearing it? Do the wise measure a people without speaking to them?" The council members shifted in their seats. Some clicked their jaws. Some rippled their wings. Others simply laughed. "Your species still bleeds for resources," one delegate sneered. "Your species still kills its own," another added. "You are a curiosity, not a partner," a third concluded. The envoy did not lower his eyes. "We asked for dialogue, not domination. We came in peace, not submission." The council leader spread its silver eyes wide. "Peace is irrelevant. Order is what matters. You will be permitted to trade under quotas. You will submit to population controls. You will abandon forbidden technologies. In return, we will spare you the fate of collapse. This is mercy. Accept it." The chamber was silent after that. The offer was not new. Other species had been given the same. Few had refused. Most had bent their knees. Those who did not were never heard from again. The envoy closed his folder. He looked around at the towering creatures, the rulers of the stars. And then he smiled. "Mercy?" he asked softly. "We do not ask for mercy. We ask for respect." The council chamber filled with laughter. Deep, booming laughter. Thin, sharp laughter. Cold alien laughter that made the air vibrate. The sound rolled over the human like a storm, but he did not flinch. He simply gathered his papers and walked out. Behind him, the laughter continued, but the sound reached only their ears, not his. Far away on a small blue planet circling an ordinary star, humanity listened to the broadcast of the council's judgment. The message spread through screens, radios, and endless networks. Primitive. Quotas. Submission. Words burned into every home, every street, every city. In one apartment, a grandmother wept silently while holding her grandson's hand. In another, a soldier clenched his jaw and stared at the ceiling. In a classroom, students whispered, half afraid, half angry. In a workshop, a mechanic slammed a wrench against steel. Everywhere, the same truth was felt. The galaxy had judged Earth as weak, but Earth had been judged before. By nature, by history, by itself, the council did not know. They had read only records of wars. They had counted only casualties. They had measured destruction and assumed that was all there was. They had not seen the music. They had not tasted the food. They had not heard the laughter of children. They had not known the stubbornness of a people who refused to stay down. The council thought humans were insects, buzzing too loudly. But humans had built cities out of stone, glass, and steel. They had crossed oceans with wooden ships. They had walked on the moon with machines made from tin and courage. Primitive, perhaps, but primitive had teeth. Primitive had imagination. Primitive had fire. And so, in hidden basements and bright laboratories, in crowded kitchens and silent forests, humanity began to plan. They did not call it war. Not yet. They called it survival. They called it dignity. They called it the only answer left when laughter turned to chains. One engineer looked at an old satellite dish and whispered, "What if we use this?" A group of coders in a garage asked, "What if our phones could become weapons?" A farmer staring at a broken radio muttered, "What if crops could carry signals?" Ideas spread like sparks in dry grass, fast, unstoppable. And while the council laughed, Earth listened. While the council dictated quotas, Earth rewired its sky. While the council labeled humans primitive, humans prepared the one thing the council had never expected: an answer. Back in the council hall, the laughter began to fade. Delegates returned to their chambers. Reports were filed. Orders were given, but one younger delegate, smaller than the rest, turned to the council leader and whispered, "Should we not watch them more closely?" Their envoy did not look afraid. The leader's silver eyes closed. Fear or pride? It makes no difference. They will comply. They always comply. The younger delegate said nothing, but in its mind, the envoy's smile still lingered. It was not the smile of a beaten man. It was the smile of someone holding a secret. And so the stage was set. The galaxy believed Earth had no teeth, no claws, no fire. The council believed laughter was enough to break human pride. But Earth had been laughed at before. By tyrants, by kings, by empires long turned to dust. Every time the answer had been the same. Humanity does not bow forever. Humanity answers. And when Earth answered this time, the stars themselves would tremble. The council wasted no time. Within a single week of their judgment, the official decree was broadcast across the stars. It came on every channel, every frequency, every translator node. There was no way to escape it. The message was short, cold, final. By order of the Galactic Council, humanity will be subject to quotas. No more than 10% of planetary resources may be used for self-development. All surplus will be transferred to council vaults. Population growth will be regulated by external monitors. Forbidden technologies are to be dismantled. Compliance will prevent further action. Non-compliance will result in sanctioned intervention. The words spread like poison through the airwaves. On Earth, people froze in place as they listened. Workers stopped in factories. Farmers left their fields. Teachers turned off classroom screens. Soldiers in barracks clenched their fists. The word that burned brightest was not quotas, not forbidden, not compliance. It was intervention. Everyone understood what it meant. Intervention was the council's word for conquest, for occupation, for erasure. In a crowded market in New Delhi, the decree played over loudspeakers. Merchants who once argued over fruit prices stood silent, listening to a future that no longer belonged to them. In a village in Kenya, elders gathered under a tree, hearing the broadcast on a single old radio. They had seen conquerors before. They had seen strangers who came with flags and orders. They knew the shape of chains, even when those chains came from the sky. In a cramped apartment in São Paulo, a mother hugged her child as the screen flickered. She whispered in his ear, "Don't listen. They don't decide who you are." But her own hands trembled, and in a dim office beneath Washington, the envoy who had stood before the council sat alone, replaying the decree again and again. His face was calm, but his eyes were full of fire. World governments met. Secret councils were held. Leaders spoke to one another through secure lines. The conversation was always the same. What can we do? We are outnumbered. Their fleets outmatch us 1,000 times. Our technology is decades behind. If we fight, we lose. If we surrender, we vanish. The arguments circled endlessly. Some urged surrender, claiming survival mattered more than pride. Others demanded resistance, even if resistance meant extinction. A few whispered of hiding, developing weapons in secret, buying time until a miracle arrived. But humanity had no miracles. Only themselves. Among the people, anger grew faster than fear. Students painted walls with messages, "We do not bow." Soldiers swore oaths in quiet halls. Farmers sharpened tools not just for soil but for defense. Scientists worked late into the night, whispering to each other, "What if? What if? What if?" The ultimatum had done more than threaten. It had united. For once in history, the divisions of Earth began to blur. Old enemies spoke as allies. Rivals shook hands. Leaders who once distrusted one another now faced the same shadow. Because this was no longer about borders. No longer about race or language or creed. This was about survival. The first sparks of resistance appeared not in government halls, but in quiet rooms. In a university basement in Germany, a group of young engineers gathered around an ancient satellite dish. They had pulled it from storage, wiped away the dust, and connected it to laptops held together with tape. One of them whispered, If they control our skies, then our skies must bite back. In a garage in California, programmers filled whiteboards with equations. They tested software on old computers, pushing them until sparks flew from the wires. If their ships run on frequencies, one said, then let us write music that makes them deaf. In a rice field in Vietnam, a farmer repaired a broken radio. As he worked, he muttered, "Crops can carry signals. Roots can hum. Maybe even the land can join the fight." The ideas were small, fragile, crazy, but they spread. Across the world, humans whispered. Each whisper carried to another, and another, and another. The council believed the ultimatum was final. To them, it was the end of the story, but on Earth, it was the beginning. Weeks passed. The council sent inspectors to monitor compliance. Ships with glowing hulls hovered above Earth's orbit, watching, waiting. Their scanners probed cities. Their sensors mapped oceans. Their machines measured heat signatures of power plants and weapon silos, and what they saw pleased them. Humans dismantled rocket parts. Factories slowed production. Armies stood down. Everything looked as it should. Submission. The council laughed again, but beneath the surface, behind locked doors, under mountains, and within digital shadows, Earth was alive with hidden energy. Machines were not dismantled. They were hidden. Codes were not erased. They were rewritten. Factories slowed production of metal shells but accelerated the crafting of components never before seen. Armies stood down in daylight but trained in the dark. Every home became a workshop. Every tool became a piece of the puzzle. Every human became a spark. The envoy who had once stood in the council chamber now traveled from city to city, speaking softly but clearly. "They call us primitive," he said. "Maybe they are right. We do not have their fleets. We do not have their weapons. But primitive means simple, and simple means flexible. We can build what they cannot imagine. We can fight in ways they cannot predict. And most of all, that we can endure." His words spread. His image lit up screens. His speeches were copied, translated, whispered in markets, repeated in schools. The council had given an ultimatum. Earth had given itself an answer. The answer did not have a name yet. To some, it was hope. To others, it was madness. But the first sketches of it lived on papers, in laptops and chalk scribbles on alley walls. An idea that did not rely on fleets or armies. An idea that used what Earth already had. An idea that could reach beyond firepower and strike at the very heart of the Council's systems. It was not a bomb. Not a missile. Not a cannon. It was something else. Something so unexpected that the Council would never see it coming. That night, as the Council's ships glowed above Earth like cruel stars, a quiet signal pulsed through the dark. It was weak, almost invisible, but it carried a promise. The promise that Earth would not bow. The promise that humanity would answer. The promise that when the time came, the galaxy would hear a voice it had never heard before. And that voice would say, "No." The ultimatum had been delivered. The Council believed it was law. On the surface of Earth, life seemed to return to normal. Factories hummed softly. Schools reopened. Markets bustled again. But under the surface, something else was happening. In basements, in hangars, in barns, in tiny apartments where wires snaked across floors. Humanity was building. It began with whispers. Small groups meeting late at night, engineers, farmers, soldiers, musicians, teachers, mechanics, coders, people who had never worked together before now found themselves sitting around the same tables. They spoke in low voices. They drew on scraps of paper. They argued. They laughed. They wept. But most of all, they planned. The idea was strange, almost impossible, but it was the only path forward. The Council had fleets of ships the size of cities. Their weapons could shatter mountains. Their shields could swallow fire. Humanity could not fight them with guns or rockets. But there was something the Council had overlooked. Something small, something fragile, something invisible. Signals. Every ship, every weapon, every communication node, every relay in the Council's grand network depended on signals. Pulses of light, waves of energy, frequencies carrying orders across the stars. Without those signals, the Council's fleets were blind, deaf, weak, and humanity knew signals. They had lived with them for centuries: radios, satellites, Wi-Fi, cell towers, music across wires, code across oceans. That was the key. The idea was given a name: Echo Relay, not a weapon of destruction, a weapon of disruption. It would use every tool humanity already had: satellites, towers, antennas, even the phones in people's pockets. Each device would become part of a giant web, a chorus, a single voice shouting into the void. The echo relay would not destroy ships. It would not fire missiles. It would sing a song of such power and precision that it would confuse the Council's systems. Their navigation would spin. Their weapons would falter. Their fleets would stall. It was not about killing. It was about balance. For once, the Council would not be untouchable. In a hidden lab in Finland, a group of scientists tested the first fragments. They connected old satellites to new code. They lit up the sky with pulses of light invisible to the human eye but deadly to alien sensors. One scientist, an old man with white hair, whispered, "If this works, they will never call us primitive again." In a desert in Nevada, soldiers set up towers disguised as wind turbines. The turbines spun lazily in the heat, but inside their bases were coils and transmitters humming with secret power. In Tokyo, musicians worked with coders. They shaped the pulse into rhythms, layering frequencies like instruments in an orchestra. One violinist laughed through her tears. "We are fighting the galaxy with music." In Lagos, teenagers hacked old radios, turning them into nodes for the growing web. One boy whispered proudly, "Even this rusted thing has teeth now." The work was not easy. People argued over details. Signals collapsed. Towers fried. Satellites overheated. Computers crashed. More than once, people shouted at one another in frustration. But then someone would remember what was at stake. "Do you want your children to grow up under quotas?" a teacher asked. "Do you want inspectors to decide who can live and who cannot?" a mother demanded. "Then stop arguing. Keep building." And they did. The Council, high above in orbit, noticed nothing. Their scanners reported low activity. Their monitors detected no fleets, no new weapons. They laughed at how quickly Earth had submitted. They filed reports calling the humans compliant. They moved on to other matters, but their silver eyes did not see the sparks glowing beneath Earth's skin. In the mountains of Chile, a girl named Maya worked as a technician. She was only 23. She had no title, no rank, but she was brilliant with machines. She spent long nights soldering wires, adjusting coils, tuning signals until her fingers burned. She sent messages to her sister back home. "Don't worry about me. I'm safe. This is important." Her sister always replied, "Come home soon, please." Maya never promised. She only said one day. At the same time, in a university in Cairo, an old professor explained the theory to his students. He drew circles on a chalkboard showing how thousands of small signals could overlap into one giant pulse. One student frowned. "But Professor, it won't be strong enough." The professor smiled. "Alone, no. But together? Together we are stronger than they think." He tapped the chalk against the board. "That is what they don't understand. That is what they will learn." The first test came at midnight. Across Earth, towers and satellites aligned. Devices buzzed softly in hidden frequencies. Engineers held their breath. Soldiers prayed. Children watched screens glow faintly blue. Then, with one single command, the echo relay spoke for the first time. It was not a sound anyone could hear. It was not a light anyone could see. But it moved. It rippled. It traveled. In orbit, one of the Council's patrol ships suddenly froze. Its lights flickered. Its engines stuttered. Its weapons shut down, alarms rang. Officers shouted. The ship spun slowly, helpless. Then, after 60 seconds, the signal ended. The ship's systems came back online. Inside the ship, alien officers were shaken. Their scanners showed no missiles. No weapons fired. Nothing had touched them. Yet for one full minute they had been blind. On Earth, the humans cheered. Some wept, some danced. Some simply sat in silence, knowing history had changed. It was proof. Proof that they could fight back. Proof that they were not helpless. Proof that primitive did not mean powerless. The echo relay worked, but there was a cost. To power the first test, an old orbital array had been pushed beyond its limits. The station burned in the atmosphere, falling like a star across the night sky. The crew inside had known it would happen. They had chosen to stay. As their ship burned, one technician sent a final message. "Tell them." We sang first. The message broke halfway through. But it was enough. Across Earth, their sacrifice became a spark. Posters carried their names. Songs were written. Children whispered about the day humanity sang to the stars. The council still knew nothing. The patrol ship filed a report of a technical malfunction. The leadership dismissed it. Machines failed all the time. They did not know it was the beginning of something far greater. And so the echo relay grew. More towers, more satellites, more nodes. From city rooftops to fishing boats, from mountain observatories to underground bunkers, Earth built its voice, a voice the galaxy would soon hear, not a voice of submission, not a voice of fear, but a voice that said, "We are here, we are many, we will not bow." The night was quiet on Earth, from the streets of Paris to the deserts of Arabia, from the mountains of Peru to the oceans of the Pacific. The stars looked calm, but hidden inside those stars, council ships drifted, watching. They believed they were safe. Their shields shimmered faintly. Their scanners pulsed across the planet. Their crews laughed at how small Earth was. Inside one flagship, a council officer leaned back in his chair. His silver eyes blinked lazily. "The humans are quiet," he muttered. "It is over." He was wrong. At midnight, Earth whispered. The echo relay came alive. Towers hummed. Satellites blinked. Radios pulsed. Laptops flickered. Phones in pockets vibrated faintly unnoticed. From deserts, cities, mountains, and oceans, millions of tiny signals rose into the night sky. At first, they seemed harmless. Just background noise. Just static. But then the signals folded together. They overlapped, they echoed, they became one. It was not chaos. It was a song, and the song struck. Above Earth, the Council's flagship suddenly shuddered. Its lights flickered. Its engines died. Officers screamed. Alarms wailed. On the bridge, the commander roared. "What is happening?" Technicians clawed at their controls. Screens went black. Weapons froze. Navigation collapsed. The mighty flagship, the pride of the Council, drifted like a broken toy. For 60 full seconds, the ship was blind, deaf, crippled. 1 minute of silence. 1 minute of helplessness. Then, as suddenly as it began, the lights returned. Engines restarted. Systems rebooted. The officers gasped for breath as if they had been drowning. The commander's voice trembled. "Report!" A young officer stammered. No impact. No weapons fired. No damage recorded. It was as if what? The commander snarled. The officer whispered. As if someone silenced us. The shock was not only in orbit. On Earth, billions watched as feeds lit up. The news spread faster than fire. The Council's flagship disabled. "Unknown force halts alien ship." Human project succeeds. In living rooms, families cried with joy. In factories, workers threw their hands in the air. In schools, children screamed and hugged. In military bases, soldiers pounded their chests. For the first time, fear gave way to hope. In a small apartment, Maya's sister saw the news and covered her mouth. She whispered, "She did it. My sister did it." In a crowded market, strangers embraced. A man shouted, "We are not slaves. We are not insects. We are human." Everywhere, people repeated the same phrase. A whisper at first, then louder, then roaring. We sang to the stars. The Council tried to hide the truth. They called it a technical malfunction. They released statements blaming solar storms, faulty wiring, random chance. But their excuses failed. Too many had seen. Too many had felt the silence ripple across space, and more importantly, the Council itself was shaken. In the Grand Chamber, delegates shouted at one another. "It was sabotage," one cried. "It was an accident," another barked. "No, it was the humans," whispered a third. The Council leader slammed the floor with a staff. The crystal walls shivered. Silence. The hall grew still. The leader's 100 silver eyes scanned the room. "You panic over shadows. The humans cannot touch us. They are primitive. They have nothing." But in the corner, a young delegate muttered, "Then why did our ships fall silent?" The question echoed louder than any laughter. Back on Earth, the envoy stood before cameras. His face was calm, his voice steady. "You see what has happened," he said. "For 60 seconds, the galaxy saw what humanity can do. We do not seek destruction. We do not seek war. But we will not kneel. If they call us primitive, let them hear the voice of the primitive, and let them know we will never bow." The speech spread across every screen, every feed, every whisper. It was not just words. It was a promise. But victory was not free. The Echo Relay had burned out one of its oldest satellites during the strike. A crew of volunteers had gone with it. They knew their ship would not survive the overload, yet they chose to stay. Their vessel became a falling star across the night. Families on Earth looked up, unaware that heroes were burning above them. Those who knew wept. And yet the grief carried pride. The names of the fallen spread. Songs were written. Flowers were laid on memorials. Their sacrifice became part of the story. In the council chamber, fear grew like a storm. Delegates whispered in corners. Some demanded retaliation. Others urged caution. Old alliances cracked. For the first time, the council felt weak. For the first time, they understood. Humanity was not an insect. Humanity was a storm waiting to break, and storms once seen could not be ignored. That night, in the silence of space, a council commander stared at Earth from orbit. His ship still trembled from the memory of silence. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "They are dangerous," he said, "not because of their weapons, not because of their fleets, but because they refused to stay small." On Earth, Maya worked deep in the mountains. Her hands shook from exhaustion. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep. But she smiled faintly as new signals lit up her screen. The Echo Relay was growing stronger. The test had worked. The world had changed. She wrote one more message to her sister. "Did you see it? We stopped them. Just for a moment, but we stopped them. Tell Mom I'm okay. Tell her we're not done yet." And so the first strike was not the end, it was the beginning. The Council's fleets were vast, their power unmatched, their arrogance endless. But Earth had a voice now, a voice that could shake ships, rattle halls, and force even the most powerful to listen. And as the stars burned silently above, one truth became clear. Humanity was not finished. Humanity was only beginning. The galaxy had watched. Some denied it, some mocked it, but deep in their hearts, every species in the Council remembered the silence. For 60 seconds, the invincible had been vulnerable. For 60 seconds, a primitive world had struck back, and the Council could not forgive that. In the Chamber of Stars, the Council leader stood tall. The crystal walls glittered with shifting constellations, but his many eyes were fixed only on one thing, the blue and white sphere of Earth floating in the projection before him. "They humiliated us," he said, his voice heavy with rage. "One world, one insignificant colony, has dared to disrupt our fleets. If we do not answer, every world will rise against us." Delegates shouted in agreement. "Crush them. Burn the relay. Show them the cost of defiance." But not all voices agreed. A few whispered caution. A serpent-like delegate hissed, "They have something new, something we do not understand. If they can silence our ships once, perhaps they can do it again." The leader's eyes narrowed. "Are you afraid of insects?" The chamber fell silent. Fear was not allowed here. Far away, Earth prepared. Maya stared at the monitors in her underground base. Her fingers trembled from exhaustion, but her eyes burned with determination. The first strike had worked, but it had also revealed the relay. The Council now knew Earth had a weapon, even if they didn't understand it, and she knew what came next. Retaliation. Her team, engineers, coders, soldiers, even farmers who had learned to solder wires, worked day and night. They reinforced antennas, patched satellites, reprogrammed ancient towers. Every device, no matter how old, no matter how broken, was tied into the relay. But the system was fragile. Every activation burned out hardware. Every strike drained power. Every second of silence in space came with a price on Earth. The price soon became clear. In South America, a relay tower overheated and exploded. Entire villages lost power. Families sat in darkness while smoke rose over the mountains. In Africa, old generators broke down. Hospitals flickered. Doctors worked by candlelight while patients prayed. In Asia, communication lines melted from overload. Farmers could no longer track weather. Traders could not send messages. The relay was humanity's sword, but it was also a fire, and fire burned everything it touched. Still, hope grew stronger. When word spread that the Council planned retaliation, Earth did not cower. Instead, people stood taller. A soldier in Poland told his unit, "If they come, let them come. We made them afraid once. We will do it again, A teacher in Kenya told her students, "Your voices are part of this. When you speak, when you sing, when you laugh, the relay carries it. You are part of the fight." And a little boy in Brazil holding a broken radio whispered, "We are not small." The council fleets began to gather. Thousands of ships, vast and dark, drifted toward the Sol system. Their weapons gleamed. Their engines burned like stars. Inside his flagship, a commander sneered, "We will erase them. Leave nothing standing. The relay will be ash before their sun rises." But deep inside, a flicker of doubt remained. He remembered the silence, the way his ship had died without warning, and he wondered, what if it happened again? Back on Earth, Maya's body began to fail. Her hands shook constantly. Her skin grew pale. She had not slept in 3 days. Yet she refused to stop. Her sister begged her in a video call. "Please, Maya, rest, eat something. You can't fight like this." Maya shook her head weakly. "If I stop, people die. If I rest, Earth falls." Tears streamed down her sister's face. "You're killing yourself." Maya smiled faintly. "If I must burn, then let me burn as a signal." The second strike came sooner than expected. A council scout ship entered orbit, scanning Earth. Its crew laughed. "Let us test this relay. Let us see if it was only luck." They never finished the scan. The echo relay awoke again. Earth's devices lit up. Radios, towers, even wristwatches buzzing faintly. The song rose sharp and pure, and once again silence fell on the ship. The scout drifted helpless, its weapons frozen, its crew terrified. On Earth, cheers erupted. Fireworks lit up the skies. Children danced in the streets, but inside the control room, Maya collapsed. Her team caught her before she hit the ground. Blood trickled from her nose. Her breath came shallow. The price was growing heavier. The council could no longer deny it. This was no accident. This was no malfunction. This was war. The leader slammed his staff in the chamber. "Enough! Assemble the full fleet. Prepare the planetary strike. Earth will be an example to all who dream of rebellion." The chamber thundered with approval. The order was given. The galaxy prepared to watch humanity burn. But humanity had already decided something else. They would not bow. They would not break. They would not let silence be the end. And in the quiet of her lab, Maya whispered one last vow to herself. "If they want war, then we will give them a voice they cannot silence." The night above Earth was no longer quiet. The stars shifted one by one, until the sky itself seemed wrong. They were not stars at all. They were engines. They were weapons. They were the Council's fleet, thousands of ships. Cruisers, dreadnoughts, carriers, vast enough to block constellations, bright enough to make children point upward in fear. Every telescope, every camera, every pair of human eyes lifted to the heavens. The world saw it. The invasion had begun. On the Council flagship, the commander's voice thundered. "Position the fleet. Prepare orbital bombardment. Earth will not survive the night." His officers obeyed, but unease grew in their faces. They remembered the silence. They remembered helplessness. Still, orders were orders. And orders meant destruction. On Earth, Maya struggled to stand. Her team surrounded her, begging her to rest, but she shoved their hands away. "The fleet is here," she rasped. "We don't have time. Connect every node, every device. Bring the relay to full strength." Her hands trembled as she adjusted controls. Sweat dripped into her eyes. Her heart raced unevenly, yet she refused to stop. In her mind, she repeated one thought over and over. We only need one chance. The world held its breath. In Paris, families huddled in basements. In Cairo, soldiers stood ready in the desert, rifles useless but still clutched tight. In Tokyo, screens flashed with evacuation orders. In New York, crowds gathered in Times Square, eyes fixed on the burning sky. Some prayed, some cursed, but all waited, and all listened for the sound of the relay. At last, Maya's voice cracked through the speakers. "Echo relay online. Stand by." Her team locked eyes with her. None spoke. None dared. Maya pressed the final key. The relay awoke. Across the world, radios screamed, towers hummed, lights flickered. Old satellites shook in orbit. Phones buzzed in pockets. Heart monitors in hospitals pulsed in rhythm. The planet sang. It was not music of joy. It was a cry, raw, fierce, desperate. The sound of 7 billion souls refusing to vanish. Above Earth, the first Council dreadnought jolted. Its engines cut. Its weapons froze. Then another. And another. The silence spread like wildfire, leaping from ship to ship. Crews screamed as consoles died. Alarms blared. Shields down. Weapons offline. Engines unresponsive. The commander roared, "Counter it! Block it!" But nothing worked. For 60 seconds, 100 ships were helpless. Earth had struck again. On the ground, cheers erupted. Fireworks lit up cities. Families wept and embraced. Soldiers pounded the dirt with fists. For a moment, hope blazed brighter than fear. But the relay was burning too. In Africa, relay towers collapsed in fire. In South America, entire grids shut down. In Europe, blackouts swept through cities. In the control room, sparks rained from the ceiling. Screens cracked. Operators fell back from exploding panels. And Maya collapsed against her console, coughing blood. Her team tried to pull her away, but she gripped the controls with bloody fingers. "Not yet," she whispered. We hold them. We hold them until the last second." In orbit, the silence began to fade. One by one, the Council ships rebooted. Engines flared. Weapons powered. Systems returned. The commander's voice shook with fury. "Enough games. Fire on the surface!" But his officers hesitated. Their faces pale, their voices trembling. "Sir, what if it happens again?" The commander snarled. "Do it!" The first blast cut through the atmosphere. A streak of fire ripped across the night, striking an empty desert. Sand became glass. The earth shook. The second blast tore into the ocean. Waves rose like walls. Entire coastlines trembled. The people of Earth watched in terror. The Council was not bluffing. The sky was burning. In the control room, Maya raised her head weakly. Her voice was broken, but her will was unshaken. "Bring it back. Push the relay again." Her team shouted, "Maya, you'll die." She looked at them, eyes dim but fierce. "If I stop, so does Earth." Her trembling hands reached for the controls once more. The relay screamed. This time the pulse was stronger, sharper, darker. Devices shattered. Satellites burned in orbit. Entire power grids collapsed. The song became a roar, not just of voices but of sacrifice. Billions of humans poured their fear, rage, and hope into the signal. It was not technology alone now. It was will. It was defiance. It was humanity refusing to be erased. Above Earth, the Council fleet convulsed. Entire formations froze. Carriers drifted helpless. Bombardment cannons fell silent. The commander slammed his fists on the console. "No, impossible. Primitive creatures cannot." But his words died in his throat as his own ship went dark. For 2 minutes, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy was nothing more than drifting metal. 2 minutes of silence. 2 minutes of terror. On Earth, people screamed in triumph. Even in blacked-out cities, even in firelit ruins, they shouted with one voice, "We are still here. We will not bow. We are human." But in the control room, Maya's body finally gave way. Her team caught her as she slumped from her chair. Her pulse was weak. Her breathing shallow, her lips moved faintly. They leaned close to hear. Tell them we sang to the stars." Her eyes closed. The relay still burned, holding the fleet in silence. But the cost had been written in blood. And as the Council struggled to comprehend what had happened, one truth spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Earth was not helpless. Earth was not primitive. Earth had power, and humanity would rather burn than kneel. The sky burned for hours. Council ships still hung above Earth, but they did not move. They floated in silence, their weapons useless, their commanders broken by fear. For the first time in history, the galaxy's strongest fleet had been stopped, not by greater firepower, not by superior numbers, but by the voices of a single world. Inside the flagship, the commander trembled. Sweat dripped down his scaled face as he stared at the darkened controls. "This cannot be," he whispered. "One world cannot do this." No one answered. His officers sat in silence, afraid to speak, afraid to move. They had seen what humanity could do, and in their silence there was something worse than fear: respect. On Earth, the relay fell quiet. The towers stood dark. The satellites hung broken. Whole cities lay without power. Streets were filled with smoke, candlelight, and the sounds of people waiting for news. In the underground control room, Maya's team held her body. Her chest no longer rose. Her hands, once so steady on the controls, were cold. Her face, pale and tired, was finally at rest. They placed a blanket over her and stood in silence. Tears blurred their eyes, but in their hearts, there was no regret. She had given everything, and Earth still lived. The next morning, news spread across the planet. Maya, the voice of Earth, has fallen. The woman who silenced the stars. The martyr of humanity. Her image appeared on screens, on posters, on walls. Not just as a scientist, not just as a fighter, but as a symbol. Children painted her name on school gates. Soldiers carved it into their armor. Families whispered it around tables lit only by candlelight. The world mourned, but the world also stood taller. The council fleet drifted for one more day, paralyzed not by the relay but by indecision. Some commanders urged retreat. Others demanded one more strike. But the memory of silence haunted them all. The leader's voice thundered through the fleet. "We are the council. We do not fear insects." Yet when the order came to fire, no one moved. Too many had seen their ships helpless. Too many wondered if the silence would return. Too many asked themselves a question that had never existed before. What if we lose? And so, with no ceremony, no speeches, no victory cry, the fleet turned. One by one, their engines flared. Slowly, carefully, almost fearfully, they withdrew from orbit. The sky cleared. The stars returned. Earth still stood. When the last ship vanished, the world erupted. People flooded the streets. Bells rang in ruined cities. Children shouted from rooftops. Soldiers embraced strangers. Priests, teachers, workers, farmers all cried the same word: victory. It was not a clean victory. Cities lay in ruins. Grids were broken. The relay was silent forever. And Maya was gone. But Earth had done what no world had ever done. It had made the council retreat. In the grand chamber of the council, silence reigned. The leader stared at the delegates, his 100 eyes burning with shame. They defied us. They made us retreat. They made us weak before the galaxy. But the delegates did not roar in agreement. They whispered instead. One murmured, "If they can silence fleets." Another whispered, "If they can fight with no weapons." Another breathed, "What if they are not primitive at all?" The chamber shifted with unease. Old certainties cracked. For the first time, the council wondered if their rule could end. On Earth, the morning began. Crowds filled streets holding candles. In New Delhi, 1,000,000 voices sang her name. In São Paulo, dancers moved through the night in her honor. In Cairo, choirs echoed across the desert. Her sister stood before cameras, voice trembling but proud. My sister was not a soldier. She was not a general. She was a girl who believed Earth could sing louder than fear. She gave her life for that song. And now the whole galaxy has heard it. The world listened in silence. Then they applauded, not as one nation, not as one people, but as humanity. In a small village, an old man fixed a broken radio. When it buzzed faintly back to life, children gathered around. He smiled through tears. "Listen," he said. "The stars are quiet. They are quiet because of us." The children laughed, but deep inside they understood. The galaxy listened too. On distant worlds, whispers spread. "Did you hear?" The humans silenced the council fleet. They fought back. They made the mighty retreat. Some laughed. Some scoffed, but some believed. For the first time, rebellion had a name. For the first time, freedom had a spark. For the first time, small worlds whispered, "If Earth can stand, maybe we can too." Back on Earth in the ruined control room, Maya's team worked silently. They patched broken wires, cleaned shattered glass, and placed flowers by her empty chair. One engineer whispered, "We can rebuild it." "The relay doesn't have to die with her." Another shook his head. "She was the relay. Without her, it will never be the same." But then a young technician spoke. His voice was soft, but his words were sharp. "She didn't build it to last forever. She built it to show we were never powerless, and now the galaxy knows." They all fell silent, and then slowly they nodded. That night, her sister walked alone under the stars. She looked up at the sky, clear now, bright again, and whispered, "You stopped them, Maya. You gave us tomorrow, and we will not waste it." Earth had survived. The council had retreated. The galaxy was changed forever, and yet, this was not the end. It was only the first victory, because now, humanity was awake, and the galaxy would never sleep again. Far from Earth, in the endless dark of the galaxy, Whispers spread like sparks on dry grass. Every world, every station, every outpost had heard the story, some through official broadcasts, some through smugglers' tales, some through frightened soldiers who could not keep silent. The words were simple. The humans silenced the fleet. The council retreated. They made the mighty fall quiet. On the mining world of Droska, slaves in iron collars passed the story from ear to ear. One miner, his skin cracked and gray, muttered while swinging his pick. They fought back. And they won. Another younger shook his head. That's impossible. The council cannot lose. But the older miner only smiled, weak but stubborn. So they said about us, and yet, I still breathe. For the first time in years, his swing carried hope. On the merchant stations of Vera, traders gathered in shadowed bars. They spoke in low voices over glowing drinks. If Earth can fight, what does that mean for us? One asked. It means the council is not untouchable, another whispered. A third leaned close, eyes darting around nervously. Careful, the council will kill anyone who spreads such talk. But no one left. No one silenced the whispers. And that silence was more dangerous than any weapon. On a farming moon in the outer rim, a child asked her mother, Are the humans strong? The mother paused, looking out at the stars. She had heard the rumors, the laughter, the fear. She nodded. Yes, she whispered. Strong enough to sing even when the galaxy tried to silence them. The child smiled and kept planting seeds. Meanwhile, the council scrambled to contain the fire. Their officials released statements. The humans only got lucky. The fleet was not retreating, merely repositioning. The incident is exaggerated, but their words rang hollow. Soldiers who had been in orbit carried different stories. Commanders avoided questions. And the galaxy, for the first time, doubted the council's voice. Inside the council chamber, cracks grew deeper. Delegates bickered louder than ever. Some demanded Earth be erased completely. Others urged peace. A few, though quiet, wondered if rebellion elsewhere was already growing. One delegate, trembling, spoke too loudly. If the humans can silence fleets, what if others learn to do the same? The chamber fell silent. No one answered. Because in their hearts they already feared it was true. On Earth, life crawled back toward normal. Power lines were rebuilt. Towers repaired. Satellites replaced. But nothing was the same. Everywhere, people walked with straighter backs. Children played war games in the streets, shouting, "We are the relay," before bursting into laughter. Soldiers saluted civilians as equals. Farmers, engineers, artists, all carried pride like a torch. They had been prey. Now they were something else. Maya's name grew larger than life. Murals painted her face on city walls. Statues rose in her honor. Songs carried her story across radio waves. Her sacrifice became not just human memory, but legend. Her sister traveled from nation to nation, speaking to crowds. She was not born a warrior, she told them. She was one of us. And that is why her voice shook the stars, because it was not only hers. It was ours, the crowds answered with a single roar, ours. In the shadows, hidden groups watched Earth carefully. On the desert world of Kaleth, a small band of rebels lit a fire in the dunes. They wore rags, their weapons rusty, their numbers few. But their leader, scarred and tired, held a cracked datapad showing a blurry image of Maya. She proved it can be done, he said. If Earth can resist, so can we. The rebels looked at each other, and for the first time, none of them looked away. Smugglers carried human broadcasts into forbidden systems. The videos showed the council fleet falling silent. They showed humans celebrating under darkened skies. They showed Maya's face everywhere the images spread, hearts stirred. Some with hope, some with envy, some with rage. The galaxy had been quiet for too long. Now the silence cracked. Back on Earth, the envoy met with world leaders in a dim, candlelit hall. Electricity was still scarce. The air smelled of smoke and oil. One leader asked, "The council will return. What do we do when they come?" The envoy's eyes were tired, but his voice was steady. Then we remind them. We remind them again and again until the galaxy knows the truth. Humanity will not kneel. The leaders murmured, uneasy but proud. None dared argue. They had already seen what unity could do. And outside the hall, crowds chanted, filling the night with words that shook the air. We sang to the stars. We silenced the mighty. We are human. On a distant world, a council soldier sat alone. His uniform gleamed, but his eyes were haunted. He had been in orbit over Earth. He had felt the silence. He whispered to himself, "They are not weak. They are not prey. They are something new." He clenched his fists, torn between duty and truth. And though he did not know it yet, his doubt was the first seed of rebellion. In the galaxy's endless dark, sparks of resistance spread, small now, weak now, but growing. And at the center of those sparks, Earth burned brightest, a small planet, a fragile world, but no longer ignored, no longer mocked, no longer powerless. Humanity had become more than itself. It had become a symbol that even the Council could not silence. And as the stars turned overhead, one thought echoed from world to world, from mind to mind. Unstoppable as dawn, if Earth can stand, why can't we? The Galactic Council could no longer ignore the whispers. Every day, new reports filled their chambers. Mining colonies refusing shipments, soldiers questioning orders, merchants secretly trading with humans. Even children across distant worlds were pretending to be Earth warriors in their games. The Council's power was cracking. And they knew it. In the great chamber, 1,000 voices rose in anger. They must be destroyed, one delegate shouted, his tendrils trembling. If Earth is allowed to live, rebellion will spread to every corner of the galaxy. Not destroyed, argued another, eyes sharp as glass. Enslaved. Break their spirit and others will think twice before rising. A third slammed the table. You fools. The fleet was humiliated. If we return and fail again, our rule is finished. The chamber erupted. Claws scraped, wings flared, voices roared. The Council was no longer a single voice. It was chaos. Then the High Speaker stood. Her voice was thin but cutting, slicing through the noise. Enough. The chamber fell silent. She looked at them all with cold silver eyes. Earth has become a sickness, she said, and like any sickness it spreads. But we are not weak. We are not divided. We are the Council, and the galaxy obeys us because we make it obey. She raised a long hand. We will send a fleet greater than any before. 10 times the ships, 10 times the firepower. We will burn their cities, seize their leaders, and grind their pride into dust. The galaxy will see what happens to those who defy us. The delegates cheered, but their voices shook. Fear lingered in the air like smoke. Orders spread quickly. Across the stars, shipyards roared to life. Weapons were forged. Soldiers marched. A new armada began to gather, vast enough to eclipse entire skies. The Council would not risk another humiliation. This time, they wanted Earth erased. But even as the Council prepared, the galaxy changed. On the mining world of Droska, the older miner who once whispered hope now stood before a crowd. The humans fought, he said, holding up his scarred hands. And so can we. The guards moved to silence him. But before they could, the miners, hundreds of them, threw down their tools and rose together. The first spark of rebellion lit the mines. On the desert planet of Kaleth, the ragged rebels moved under the stars. Their leader held the cracked datapad with Maya's face. She showed us that one voice can silence an empire, he told them. Now it is our turn. The rebels attacked a supply convoy, striking with stolen weapons. For the first time, Council soldiers fled from farmers and outcasts. The rebellion had begun. News of these uprisings spread like fire. In marketplaces, whispers turned to chants. In slave pits, chains were tested. In lonely villages, children carved Maya's name into walls. Everywhere, the same thought stirred. If Earth can fight, why not us? On Earth, leaders gathered in an underground bunker. Maps of the stars glowed on the walls, dotted with red marks showing new rebellions. The Council is preparing to return, one general said. But they are not only coming for us. They are trying to crush everyone who dares rise. The envoy stood at the center, calm but grim. Then we are no longer fighting only for Earth, he said. We are fighting for the galaxy. The room went silent. The weight of his words hung heavy, but no one disagreed. The people of Earth prepared once more. Engineers repaired the relay tower, stronger than before. Scientists worked day and night to shape the strange weapon of silence. Soldiers trained, but so did farmers, doctors, and children. No one waited to be saved. They all prepared to fight. And in the shadows, messages flew across secret channels. Earth spoke to rebels in hidden codes. Rebels answered with promises of fire and steel. A web of resistance began to stretch across the stars. The Council believed they were crushing rebellion. Instead, they were forging it. Still, fear remained. One night, under a broken sky, the envoy walked alone. He looked at the stars where the Council's armada gathered like a storm. "They will come soon," he whispered, "and when they do, we may not survive." But then he heard something. A sound carried through the dark streets, voices singing, ordinary people standing together singing the song Maya once sang through the relay. It was rough, off-key, imperfect, but it was strong enough to reach the envoy's heart. He smiled for the first time in weeks. "Even if we fall," he murmured, "the galaxy will rise." Far away in the Council's secret war room, the High Speaker watched the galaxy's reports. Rebellion here, resistance there, whispers spreading everywhere. Her silver eyes narrowed. "They think Earth gave them hope," she said softly. "But hope is nothing against fire." She turned to her generals. "Prepare the armada. We leave at dawn." And so, across the galaxy, two forces began to move. The Council, vast and ruthless, bringing the weight of its empire. The humans and their allies, small but growing, carrying a fire that could not be silenced. The storm was coming. And the galaxy held its breath. The stars over Earth flickered with unnatural light. At first, people thought it was dawn coming early. But then the shadows grew. The sky filled with dark shapes. Ships, thousands of them, stretching across the heavens like an iron storm. The Council armada had come. Panic spread through the streets. Families held each other. Soldiers tightened their grips on rifles. Children stared upward, wide-eyed, as the sky turned into a sea of metal. The Council's message was clear: submit or burn. In the underground command hall, Earth's leaders gathered around glowing maps. The envoy stood at the center, voice calm though his hands trembled. "They are more than we imagined," a general whispered. "We cannot fight that," but the envoy's gaze was steady. "We do not fight them alone." He nodded to the relay tower map. It pulsed with light. Repairs were finished, stronger than before. "If Maya's voice could silence one fleet," he said, "then her song carried by many worlds can silence an empire." Above Earth, the Council fleet began its descent. Warships positioned for orbital strikes. Bombardment codes blinked red on their screens, but before the first shot fell, the relay tower roared to life. A beam of light shot into the stars, and with it a voice, not one voice but many human voices, rebel voices. Miners, farmers, soldiers, children, all singing the same song Maya once sang. The song spread through the void, carried by hidden satellites, smuggler relays, and rebel transmitters across the galaxy. In the mines of Droska, workers dropped their tools and sang. On Kaleth, rebels lifted their weapons and sang. On distant farming moons, children pressed their hands to the sky and sang. The galaxy was no longer silent. Inside the Council ships, systems flickered. Commands froze. Engines stalled. Weapons went quiet. The silence of the human's weapon reached across the vast armada, choking circuits, bending signals, unraveling control. On bridge after bridge, Council commanders shouted in panic as their ships refused to obey, but the High Speaker stood tall on her flagship, silver eyes burning. "Do not falter," she screamed. "Fire by hand. Burn them from the skies." Some ships obeyed, struggling to break free of the silence. Beams of fire rained down, slamming into Earth's defenses. Cities shook. Towers crumbled. Smoke filled the air, yet Earth did not kneel. Missiles launched from hidden silos. Fighters streaked upward like sparks. Ground cannons roared. Humanity fought with everything it had. And then the rebels came. From the darkness of space, ragged ships appeared, stolen freighters, patched fighters. Old mining craft armed with crude weapons. They were weak, untrained, and outnumbered. "But they were not afraid for Earth," cried a rebel commander. "For freedom," shouted another. The rebel fleet crashed into the Council's armada like a wave of fire. The battle was chaos. Council warships, crippled by silence, spun helplessly as rebels swarmed them. Explosions lit the void, each one brighter than a sun. On the ground, humans fought street by street, turning rubble into barricades, ruins into fortresses. Every voice, every cry, every shot echoed with the same message: "We will not kneel." In the command hall, the envoy gripped the table, voice hoarse. "Keep the relay burning," he ordered. The song must not stop. Technicians worked frantically, sweat dripping down their faces. The tower glowed brighter, carrying the voices of billions. On the flagship, the High Speaker watched her empire crumble. Rebels rose on world after world. Reports of uprisings poured in. Entire colonies refused orders. Soldiers abandoned ranks, her silver eyes filled with rage. "Enough!" she roared. She turned to her weapon master. "Charge the planet killer. If Earth will not kneel, we will erase it." The weapon master hesitated, fear in his voice. "But, Speaker, the fleet is failing. If we fire, the backlash may—" "Do it!" she screamed. The great weapon began to charge, a sphere of burning light forming at the heart of the flagship. Earth's defenses buckled. Time was running out. Then from the relay tower, a new voice rose above the others. It was soft at first, trembling, but steady, Maya's sister. She stood before the microphone, tears on her face, and spoke. "My sister gave her life so we could be free. She was not chosen. She was not perfect. She was just one of us. And now we must all be like her. We must all be the voice that silences the mighty." She began to sing. And across Earth, across the galaxy, billions joined her. The song grew until it was not a song but a storm of voices, human and alien, free and unbroken. The flagship trembled. Its weapon flickered. Circuits fried. Alarms screamed. The High Speaker shouted orders. But her voice was drowned by the storm. And then, with a sound like the tearing of the sky, the flagship exploded. The blast ripped through the Council armada, shattering ships, scattering fire across the void. The great storm was over. The silence of the Empire was broken. When the dust cleared, Earth still stood, scarred, burned, but alive. The people poured into the streets, weeping and cheering. Soldiers dropped their weapons, hugging strangers. Children laughed through smoke and rubble. The relay tower flickered, then dimmed, but its light had already traveled across the stars. The galaxy knew. The Council was broken. The age of silence was over. Weeks later, a great gathering was held in Earth's capital. Not only humans, but rebels from across the stars filled the square. Flags of many worlds waved together. Songs rose, not of war, but of hope. The envoy stood before them, his voice carrying across the crowd. "Today is not only Earth's victory, today is the galaxy's freedom. We fought not as slaves, not as prey, but as equals, and from this day forward no world will kneel again." The crowd roared, and above them, carved into the sky by the stars themselves, shone the name of their symbol, their hero, their voice, Maya. In that moment, humanity was no longer alone. They were not just Earth. They were not just one people. They were the spark that had lit the galaxy, and the galaxy, at last, burned with freedom.